area. It's not only Kumawu.
He reiterated government's determination to complete all road projects across the country. Now, away from Kumewu, executives of GBC's unions are calling on the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission to urgently reverse the current decision to discontinue some allowances enjoyed by workers of GBC per their current audit arrangements. According to the union groups, refusal of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission to revert the status quo will leave staff with no alternative than to escalate their displeasure. Per the FWSC arrangements, GBC workers will lose part of their take-home pay starting from the end of this month, with a greater percentage of workers to lose about 33% of their current salaries. A report by Gifty AJ. For starters, and in open protest, this is how charged the studios of GBC's breakfast show was when leadership of both the junior and senior staff unions appeared for an opportunity to air their grievances about decisions by the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission to cut some allowances of the already difficult salary condition. Reason given is that this is part of the current national payroll monitoring ongoing. This led to a hold on transmission of the breakfast show for about 35 minutes after some consultation with the acting director of television, Mr. George Lomote, following which the union groups allowed the show to continue. In an interview with GBC News, leaders of both the junior and senior staff unions, Mr. Samnat Kevo and Mr. Tahiru Abdul Razak Mohammed, spoke about the reality of the situation.
If today our salary, people are walking from La Paz, Airport Junction, North Kaneshi, to come to work, and you are now going to take those little allowance from them. You could imagine impact on people's family, marriages, education, health-wise. So such things. Anyone who look at GBC's workers are as if it is a crime to work in GBC. We deserve better. We have contributed immensely to the democratic dispensation of this country, and GBC should not be taken for granted. If anyone has a personal agenda with GBC, that person to shelve it. GBC is bigger than everybody. GBC is Ghana. The soul of Ghana is GBC. The spirit of Ghana is GBC.
As I speak to you, about 33% of my salary has gone down as compared to last month. And you think I should sit down? I should sit down. 33% of my salary, 33% of my salary has gone down. And so I should sit down.
Currently, the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, in collaboration with the Internal Audit Agency, is ongoing with a nationwide payroll monitoring exercise with the aim of developing and monitoring allowances and benefit of public service workers. In the case of GBC, the workers were not involved as per standard audit principles, but the corporation was only copied on April 5 about the impending adjustment in salaries, starting with the month of May salaries. Per the proposed salary cut, senior staff, for instance, might lose as much as 33% of their current salaries, which is in disagreement with ILO's global salary protocols. Gifty AJ, GBC News, Accra. And in an interview, the Director General of GBC, Professor Amin Al-Hassan, says GBC has taken all the necessary steps to have the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission and the Controller and Accountant General's Department to rescind the implementation of what it terms and earned allowances by workers of GBC. He provided documented correspondence from GBC to the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, which was subsequently copied to the Sector Minister, the Minister for Finance, and the Auditor General. Professor Amin Al-Hassan spoke to our reporter, Gifty J, in Accra.
The letter came, we responded and made it clear to Fair Wages that these allowances that they are referring to are negotiated allowances, so they should engage Public Service Workers Union. However, management provided contextual information qualifying those allowances and the basis under which they were paid. They were paid based on, some of them were based on collective agreement, conditions of service, And so we made reference to those particular documentation, and we made copies of those documents and sent them to Fair Wages. We did that, and we expected Fair Wages to respond to our letter. So the implementation that Fair Wages has instructed, even today I engage Fair Wages, and I still insist that a solution is for Fair Wages to agree to meet with the Public Service Workers Union and GVC management to agree and share a common understanding of what is going on.
Still on the Workers' Union of GBC and the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, the Commission says claims by unions of the state broadcaster, the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, that the decision to remove some allowances of staff from the payroll is unfair and will make the worker worse off are inaccurate. Now, the Commission boss, Mr. Ben Arthur, said an ongoing nationwide payroll monitoring exercise on staff of GBC identified anomalies. Hence, the decision to ensure that only those genuinely entitled to them benefit. Mr. Arthur says staff should expect an increase in some approved allowances this month of May.
Staff are taking these allowances, but they are category 4 allowance. The question is, those who are ineligible are the ones who have been affected. So yes, it's true that in other areas, people receive this allowance, but they are for a certain category. You rise through the ranks and get to level 23 as a director and see that if these allowances will not be accorded you, per the communication between Fair Wages and controller, the allowances that have been negotiated for and approved, it will reflect in your pockets. That 82% rise in your non-core allowances, you will benefit from it, because controller has communicated to us that May is when you begin to receive. For the ineligible ones, it will not reflect. Fair Wages is resolved that we will continue to do the payroll monitoring. If there is any individual who is aggrieved, we have the mechanisms for redress. You can write to us, we'll sit down again with you.
Let's take you to the Central Region now. The National Pensions Regulatory Authority has educated workers in the formal and informal sectors on pensions. At Cape Coast, the Minister for Employment and Labour Relations, Mr. Ignatius Bafwewa, encouraged all workers to join the scheme for a better future during their retirement.
The formal sector of the economy is considered the largest, employing about 80 to 85% of the country's workforce. The sector's participation in a formal pension scheme arrangement is, however, limited, causing most of the people to live below the poverty line in their old ages. The introduction of the Tier 3 pension scheme established by the National Pensions Act 2008, Act 766, makes provisions for a pension scheme for workers in the informal sector to ensure retirement income security. Farmers, fishermen, commercial drivers, spare parts dealers and traders can sign on to the scheme. To ensure all persons in the sector understand the scheme better, the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, NPRA, has embarked on a campaign at the markets, mosques and churches at Cape Coast, Mankasim and Aguna Swedru. The team also visited some educational institutions such as the Commander College of Education and Cape Coast Technical University. The Chief Executive of the NPRA, Mr. Hayford Krofi, explained the rationale behind the exercise.
The new Pensions Act has also opened up the opportunities for even people who are in the informal sector to join pensions. So we would like to appeal to all Ghanaians who are of the working age, from the age of 15 till the time you retire. Please, one day you will retire. And if you retire, how are you going to live your life beyond work? It's therefore important for every Ghanaian to make a little contribution. So, as I say, you save for the rainy day. When you retire and you don't have the energy and the strength to work and you don't earn any income, this is what you're going to fall on.
Let's do business and finances. The president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, is calling for a rethink in the global investment community about the perception of risk in Africa. He says from a study by Moody's, Africa has the second lowest of risk in infrastructure investment in the world. At a news conference prior to the opening of the African Development Bank annual meetings at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, Dr. Adesina emphasized that Moody's study proves that the risk in Africa is mere perception and not real.
The African Development Bank is dedicating its 2023 annual meeting scheduled from the 22nd to the 26th of May in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, to mobilizing private sector financing for climate and green growth in Africa. For the AFDB, the stakes are high, especially in the midst of global multiple crises, including hikes in food and fuel prices, as well as climate change. But the bank is happy that it has what it takes to achieve inclusive growth and sustainable development, which will lift millions out of poverty and provide a better future for its citizens. And at a news conference, the president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, said private sector investment is crucial to mitigating the negative effect of climate change on Africa.
The issue is not risk. The issue is how you manage risk. There's risk in everything. So risk should not be a reason why you're not making something. It's a risk-return world. It's managing your downside risks and optimizing on the upswing of it in terms of returns. Africa will need $2.7 trillion by 2030 to finance climate change needs.
Financing is a critical issue that will dominate discussions at the annual meetings of the African Development Bank underway at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Africa's capacities to mobilize domestic resources are limited, partly due to poor diversified economies, difficult access to international capital markets, persistence of illicit financial flows, and above all, disproportionate concentration of global resources in other regions. The African Development Bank is calling for deconcentration of official development assistance to Africa, and more importantly, to be given to multilateral banks like the AFDB to be able to distribute or leverage on these resources to enable Africa leapfrog some of the challenges it is facing now. GBC News, Edward Nyako reporting from Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt.
From Egypt, let's take you to the international front in Nigeria. The Presidential Election Petition Court, PPEC, on Monday in Abuja dismissed the application by the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and the Labour Party for